so we can finally have a nice little conversation, a nice simple conversation about Megumi Fushiguro, and more specifically, his domain. Because as of recently, with the development of the culling game and it continuing forward and expanding upon itself, we're obviously going to detour into different characters. We've seen it with Yuji, we're now seeing it with Megumi, we'll probably see it with Akari and Panda, and then eventually Yuta, hopefully, Maki, etc. But currently, where we are focused is none other than Megumi. And a couple of months back, I made a video talking about Megumi and how the culling games would be his arc. This would be the place where you would see him shine exponentially. And there was a pretty good thought process, I believed, going into that video, and that whole idea is because Maki was the first person to kind of start everything. I guess you could count Yuji in the sense of Shibuya and everything happening after Gojo being sealed away, but for the most part, to see that exponential rise in power and where the world was actually going after Gojo was no longer here, Maki was the first person to kick it off. And someone that's always been teetering on the line of showcasing what their potential is, showcasing their possibilities, the culling game rotating around Megumi specifically in regards to his sister and her involvement and how he wants to involve himself because of her, and that being an actuator for his emotions, his growth, his development. He's taking this extremely seriously, and we would see a side that we haven't seen before. Mind you, this was months before the culling game even happened, and now we are finally starting to see the very early stages of it, and it is beyond beautiful. It is absolutely incredible. So with that, let's begin.
The flavors are melting on my tongue.
For a little bit of context, if you're not caught up to Kaisen, which I believe is chapter 170, soon to be 171 in the next week or two, I'd highly recommend you do. Within this current point, or at least over the past handful of chapters, Megumi has shown us a very scary mindset that we have been waiting to see for such a long time. We've been so desperately wanting to visualize his emotions, his mindset, where he would go, how far he would put himself into certain situations, and what he would do to get out of it. Because his world is changing very rapidly. Now that Gojo is not here, this power has to escalate elsewhere. We have to see this growth. We have to see this increase exponentially and at a very fast rate. And Megumi is one of the scariest in that department because throughout the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen's narrative, he's always been pushed as someone with potential. And I don't mean potential in the sense of just being another powerful person, but someone with the likeliness of rivaling some of the most powerful characters in the story. Yuta, Akari, Sukuna, Gojo, etc. with the right path, the right mindset, the right emotions, and Megumi's character, his architecture in itself. He has everything within his disposal to be one of the scariest, most powerful individuals within this story, and you've seen a very, very brief, slight version of it within Shibuya. Just a teaser. The monstrosity that was Magarama, or whatever it's called, that he managed to summon is a product of that, what he's capable of. And if you go back and trace those steps through the entirety of the story before Shibuya, he was willing to try and summon that thing very early. And I'm talking about the first encounter with Sukuna. It seems like he was going to try and summon Magarama, if not at least try to open up his domain. Now, admittedly, that was a pretty massive leap in abilities. He skipped a couple of steps. Half domain, full domain, then whatever that big massive monstrosity was. Obviously he skipped the domain department and just went straight to that summoning, but now we are seeing the domain. We are seeing a very specific stylization of the domain. And what I mean by this is this isn't something that he's pulling out on a whim. This isn't something that he feels forced to use. This is something that for the first time within the story, he is approaching with the intent of learning. And we all know when Megumi is learning, when he's understanding, when he's dissecting information, he is beyond impressive. How he utilizes it, how he weaponizes it, how he transforms it into something digestible is efficient. It is impeccable. So we get to see the very early stages of what his full domain would look like. And I mean the very early stages. Do know that Megumi still is nowhere near the power level required to open up his domain in a full conceptualized format, but he is learning. He's visualizing visualizing, he's understanding his abilities, his wants, and how this domain actually functions. So it's almost a complete opposite to the first time he opened up his domain, where you could see his emotions take over and how it was kind of used as a final straw type situation, and you could see it spread all over his face. He was chaotic and crazy and out of control, and to put simply, his very uncontrollable domain was controlling him. This time, obviously it's the opposite. He is within control, he is precise, he is clearly seeing and conceptualizing what he wants to do, and it's evolving. It's scary to see how far he's come with the domain without actually trying to use it multiple different times. I think the only other time he's tried to use it within this point from start to where he was now was within Shibuya to get into Dargon's domain, but he only used his domain to get in, which originally he was going to use it to get out. Since then, he's had no time to practice or learn or anything along those lines, and it works extremely well with the world of Kaisen, that just Gojo being sealed away is retroactively getting people to evolve and learn and grow at a very rapid rate, regardless if they're practicing or not. And in Megumi's case, one of the only people within the story to take this information and utilize it to such an efficient extent. We may be in the very early stages of his full domain, but him being able to understand it and willing to experiment makes for a very dangerous thing. So what is this domain? What can we expect? Because we do get some sort of imagery for it. It looks like a vertebrae of a spine or something, and then a nervous system. But how does this work in general? So I sat here and thought about what this would be visualized as, because a spine is a very massive thing. Like it's a singular or two vertebrae, I believe is what you would call them. And then there's like a little knot that looks like a moth on the bottom. I believe is meant to resemble some sort of charm for curses. And then on top of all of that, or behind it if you will, there's a bunch of roots, or what I consider to be the nervous system, right? Originally, I thought the nervous system was building something, that different things would fill out on top of the nervous system. But after thinking about it and going back and looking at his original domain, I don't actually think that's the case. I think the nervous system is actually more so roots. My thought process goes down to a pretty literal translation of what his domain is actually called, which is Chimera Shadow Garden. We know that within his domain, at least the first iteration of it, the playing field becomes fully encased with shadows. It's complete darkness basically, and he's able to manipulate and use all of his Shikigami in a very efficient way, but also create clones of himself, kind of swim through it. There's a plethora of traversal abilities and power abilities that he can go with. What I think he is currently building is quite literally a Chimera Shikigami, maybe something similar to the Magarama that he managed to actually bring out. But this is a product of all of his Shikigami, and my thought process went along the lines of the roots connecting to all the possibilities and Shikigami itself, taking all of the nutrients and bringing it back into creating a singular being, a singular Shikigami Chimera that is kind of all of them combined into one. To me, this somewhat makes the most sense for now. This could easily change with the newest chapter and how it's conceptualized or even visualized, but the more I go back and look at what his domain is, what it entails, and the whole Shadow Garden Chimera aesthetic, it's quite literal in design. His Shadow Garden is quite literally that, and the Chimera that's currently getting built on top of it, which is in very early stages of being built, is most likely using the domain as an energy source, as a nutrient source. So you have the link to the Shadow Garden, but you also have the Chimera being self-sufficient, which, if by any means this is the case, it's actually kind of scary how powerful this could truly be. And I think it works well with Megumi's character if his domain is more scary because of how it's visualized and how very technical it can be, rather than raw strength or raw power. I think there's a very drastic difference between the two. You can have a lot of power and open up a domain and know nothing about it, but still cause a lot of damage, right? Even though you have no understanding of it whatsoever. Whereas you could have a lot less power, struggle to open up a domain, but have so much finesse and understanding of it that it is incredibly powerful, almost equal in strength to the other. In Megumi's situation, I don't think he has to be the most powerful person, especially if his domain is kind of self-sufficient. The difficulty doesn't come with necessarily opening it because of how how much cursed energy it uses, even though we know it uses a lot, but more so the amount of cursed energy that it uses to visualize what is going on, to understand it, to comprehend the entire technicality of it. And when you look at the skeleton and the chimera and something being built in the nervous system, it makes sense how complex this thing truly is. But if it is feeding off his shadows, his shikigami, it could potentially be self-sufficient in nature, meaning that the potential of this thing feeding off the shikigami instead of Megumi's cursed energy boils down to Megumi being able to visualize it, making this theoretical thing into a reality. Now obviously this is complete hypothetical. We're in a very early stage for this, and it can go in a lot of different directions. He's currently using this ability within a gymnasium, so it already kind of creates a boundary, because that is one of the most difficult things that he can't control, is how massive this Shadow Garden is. And I believe that's definitely the biggest issue that he faced throughout this story, is being able to add this level of finesse to the size of Chimera Shadow Garden, because it would spawn itself being too massive, which led it to being uncontrollable and too much cursed energy being taken. Whereas now he has put himself purposefully within a gymnasium to open it up to only a specific length, so now this chimera structure thing can actually be built. What it actually turns into, however, I assume is just going to be a very horrific, weird combination of all of his shikigami. Maybe something that looks like Magarama, or a version of that. That's just a very early guess. Originally I thought it might have been some sort of skeleton, but after looking at the nervous system, there's no real inherent structure to it, at least for now. It seems more garden root orientated, like it's sucking nutrients out of the domain, or out of the shikigami I should say, and putting it back into this skeletal thing at the moment. I assume from this point forward we will see different iterations of this domain, and within more of the serious fights in relation to Megumi's sister, you will see a more complete version of this domain. If he's able to open this up many different times within specific limitations and boundaries, he may be able to reserve himself pretty efficiently. Even though he's extremely worn out, and he will be worn out after this situation, I think he definitely realizes how much it's most likely going to take from him. Engaging it from the first time he done it, the simplicity of the second time he done it within Dargon's domain, and doing it now as like a final resort type of thing, we are within a different mindset of Megumi. It's not the suicidal mindset anymore, if you will, which is a jokingly mindset that a lot of us have for Megumi, because the abilities he's wanted to pull out throughout the entirety of the story is stuff that he could never handle, and stuff that would potentially kill him. Now, however, he needs to live, he needs to survive, and he can't just use a domain knowing that he's going to pass out after it, because he can't afford that. He's in a very dangerous environment, so he's being very precise and specific, and you've already seen it. How he's fighting within the Culling Games is actually very different to what it was throughout the entirety of the story. He has a purpose, he has a goal, he has intent. So he is now willing to kill people very effortlessly, but he's also willing to run away, to catch a breath, to give himself a better advantage, to get the higher ground, whatever is needed, and he done exactly this for his domain. The people that he's fighting against, he most likely could have easily overpowered just opening up his domain there, but that comes at the cost of putting him at a very exhausted risk after everything is finished, after that fight actually concludes. So to avoid that, he's going the more intellectual route, the more precise, the more conceptualized, where he can open up this domain in a very portional extent, but be very cohesive with it and expand upon it to learn, to grow, to adapt, which is a beyond impressive thing to see. The way Megumi is going now, by the end of the Culling Games, he's going to be one of the most proficient characters within the story, and one of the scariest to verse, because of how he thinks about things, because of everything that he's putting himself through. You've seen how quick it was for him to switch into a serious mode and straight up kill someone for the very first time. He is not playing around anymore. He's not taking chances. He's not being silly. He's not making wrong decisions. He is thinking methodically about everything, from his abilities to his life to his cursed energy to everyone else, all for the sake of his sister, because in his mind, failure here is not an option. It equals to death, and that is something that he cannot afford. You will see Megumi grow more and more at such a beautiful rate, and the attention that comes towards him is going to be incredible. This unstable full domain right now is is only the beginning. It will get better and better and more precise and more scary and more accurate until you finally see the full version of it, and it is a monstrosity of a chimera thing being built, and the power that encompasses Megumi Fushiguro's character, his hard work finally paying off into showing us what he's truly capable of. We are within the earliest of stages, but so far it has been such a treat to watch him learn and adapt to his surroundings within an environment that invokes that response. The more dangerous people he comes up against, the more that will spark and rapidly increase. And I, for one, couldn't be more than excited to see how it turns out for him. Endtime. So welcome to the end of the video. If you have made it this far, I greatly appreciate you. Thank you. But do let me know how you feel about Megumi Fushiguro, especially his full domain currently. How he's building it, what do you think it is, what is it turning into, how do you think it functions, and are you impressed by the overall character that is Megumi? Because we've had quite an amazing handful of chapters for his character as of recently, and it has shown a completely new side of him. Let me know how you feel within the comment section below. But with that, I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.